Something strange is happening in the world of high-level entertainment, and if you've been paying attention to the recent footage coming out of France, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When Jim Carrey stepped onto the stage at the 51st César Awards in Paris, the room fell silent, but the internet exploded with a single chilling question. Who is that man? We aren't just talking about a new haircut or a bit of weight loss. We are talking about a fundamental shift in the very essence of one of the world's most recognizable faces. For decades, Jim was the king of manic energy, a human cartoon whose face could contort into 1,000 different shapes. But the man standing at that podium seemed restrained. He was polished, he was calm, and he spoke in a perfect fluid French that felt almost too rehearsed, too synthetic. Longtime fans who have studied every frame of his career pointed out the most disturbing anomaly of all, his eyes. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, Jim Carrey's eyes were a deep, unmistakable brown, a trait that defined his intense gaze in every close-up from The Truman Show to Eternal Sunshine. But in Paris, under the bright lights of the gala, they weren't brown. They were a piercing, glassy green-blue. Biologically, eye color doesn't just flip a switch in your 60s, leading many to believe we weren't looking at a legendary actor receiving an honorary award, but a high-fidelity replacement stepping into a role he wasn't quite prepared to play. This isn't just a wild theory born in the dark corners of a forum. It's a pattern that has been emerging ever since Jim decided to stop being a character and started becoming a whistleblower. To understand why people think the real Jim was phased out, you have to go back to the moment he stopped playing the game. It started with that infamous red carpet interview where he wandered around a reporter, circling her like a shark, and told the world that none of this is real, wall of a very real, very dark simulation. He was mocking the icons, mocking the fragrance in the air, and essentially telling the elite that he was done being their puppet. But in this industry, you don't just quit being a puppet without a price. Shortly after Jim started giving these cryptic, ego-shattering interviews, he took it a step further by going on national television and literally exposing the rituals and the secret meetings. The industry has a way of making you disappear, or worse, making you change. This brings us to the darkest chapter of the Jim Carrey saga, the tragic passing of his former partner, Katharina White. The official narrative says it was a heartbreaking end to a troubled relationship, but the details that surfaced in the aftermath were haunting. There were whispers of aliases like Arthur King being used to obtain powerful substances, and allegations that the industry was using his personal life to squeeze him, to break his spirit, and to send a clear message: stay in your lane or lose everything. Many believe this was the turning point where the old Jim, the rebel who fought against Big Pharma and questioned the very nature of reality, was finally silenced. This is where the cloning theories transitioned from sci-fi to a terrifying possibility. Figures like Kid Buu have openly discussed the existence of facilities where the first generation of a star is stored and their consciousness is harvested or replicated. He described a process where bone fragments are used to transfer memories, creating a reproductive version of a person that can be edited. You can keep the talent, you can keep the face, but you can remove the troublesome traits, like the urge to be a whistleblower. When you look at the Jim in Paris, you see a version of him that is perfectly compliant, perfectly on script, and devoid of that spark of rebellion that once defined him. It's as if they hit the reset button, polished the exterior, and sent him back out to play the part of the legend without the burden of the truth teller. Even the way he moves feels different. The jagged, unpredictable physicality of the 90s is gone, replaced by a smooth, almost robotic grace. Some say it's just aging, but others point to the Epstein files and the Zoro Ranch investigations in New Mexico. If the real Jim is gone, he left behind a trail of breadcrumbs in his old movies and his crazy interviews, hoping we would eventually look past the mask. Nobody notice, because the replacement looks just like you, except for the eyes.
The rabbit hole goes even deeper when you realize that Jim Carrey we're seeing today isn't just aging, he's evolving into a version of himself that contradicts every radical truth he spent the last decade screaming from the rooftops. If you go back to those viral clips from 2017, Jim wasn't just being deep or spiritual, he was essentially deconstructing the Hollywood matrix in real time, telling us that the icons we worship are nothing more than empty vessels. He was the one who famously said that peace lies beyond personality, beyond invention and disguise. Yet here he is in Paris, leaning into the ultimate invention, the polished, tuxedo-wearing elder statesman of cinema. It's a total 180-degree turn that doesn't sit right with those who followed his journey into the no-self philosophy. The shift is so jarring that it has led many to revisit the clonate claims made by insiders who suggest that when a star becomes too difficult or starts glitching in public, like Jim did on those red carpets, they are taken offline for a refurbishment. This is where the science of the elite comes into play. We've known about Dolly the sheep since the 90s, but what have they been doing in the decades since? Whistleblowers like Kid Buu have described memory fragments being harvested from bone marrow to create replicas that carry the talent but lack the defiance. Think about it. The Jim who mocked the Illuminati on Jimmy Fallon was a liability to a multi-billion-dollar industry. He was telling kids not to enter Hollywood, calling it a place of dark rituals and secret meetings in the woods. That version of Jim was a threat to the recruitment pipeline of the elite. But the Paris Jim? He's safe, he's predictable, he's exactly what the industry needs to maintain the illusion of normalcy. And speaking of the woods, we have to talk about the chilling parallels between Jim's jokes and the reopening of the Zoro Ranch investigation in New Mexico. For years, Jim dropped cryptic hints about human hunts and hunting for pleasure among the global elite. People laughed it off as his typical dark humor, but now that the New Mexico Attorney General has officially reopened the inquiry into Jeffrey Epstein's sprawling ranch, those jokes feel like a leaked testimony. We're talking about a property known as the Playboy Ranch of Santa Fe, a place where local politicians and high-level gallivanters allegedly gathered for activities that are only now being described in legal depositions as alarming. If Jim was trying to warn us about the Zoro Ranch and the human hunts years before the public had even heard the name Epstein, it would explain why he was suddenly surrounded by tragedy and controversy. The loss of Katharina White wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was the moment the vultures circled in. The media didn't just report on her passing, they used it to paint Jim as a villain, a drug provider under the alias Arthur King, effectively neutralizing his voice. In Hollywood, if they can't kill your body, they kill your reputation, and if that doesn't work, they reset the character entirely. This character reset theory gained massive traction when Katt Williams went on his legendary tear, exposing how the industry protects its secrets by replacing anyone who won't wear the dress or follow the ritual. Is it possible that the real Jim Carrey, the one who saw through the veil and tried to pull us through with him, was finally offed by the system he tried to expose? The man we see now has the same smile, but the frequency is different. The manic field of energy Jim has been replaced by a smooth operator who no longer questions the meaningless nature of award shows. He's now part of the very icons he once claimed didn't exist. This leads us back to the most undeniable piece of evidence, the biological glitch. You can change your clothes, your hair, and even your personality through therapy or reprogramming. But changing the pigment of your iris from deep brown to glassy green-blue is something that typically requires more than just getting work done. It looks like a manufacturing error, a glitch in the matrix that occurs when you try to replicate a soul. We are living in a time where the line between reality and performance has been completely erased. Jim warned us that there is no me, and maybe he was being more literal than we ever imagined. Maybe the Jim Carrey we loved really did stop existing years ago, leaving behind only a high-fidelity shell to collect the trophies and keep the masses from asking too many questions. As the Epstein files continue to drop and the truth about Zoro Ranch finally comes to light, the silence of the new Jim speaks louder than any of his old rants ever did. He's no longer the whistleblower. He's the trophy on the shelf, a reminder of what happens when you try to kick up too much dust in a house built on secrets. Whether it's cloning, advanced CGI, or just a man who was finally broken into submission, one thing is certain. The Jim Carrey who told us none of this matters would be the first person to tell us that the man standing in Paris is a lie. The industry wants you to look at the awards and the French speech and believe everything is fine. But the eyes don't lie. They are the windows to the soul. And in Paris, it looked like those windows had been replaced with one-way mirrors. We have to ask ourselves, if they can replace a legend like Jim Carrey right in front of our eyes and have us applaud for it, who else in our reality is just a character being played by an entity we don't recognize? The mystery of Jim's transformation isn't just about one actor. It's about the state of our world and the terrifying possibility that the truth tellers are being phased out in favor of safe replicas. Keep your eyes on the glitches, because they are the only things left that are real in a world made of invention and disguise.